Michael Jackson went from boy wonder to global pop superstar to a pretty sad figure. He was haunted by lawsuits, paparazzi, and failed plastic surgery. There's no denying he took drugs and had some questionable relationships, yet there is also no denying his legacy on the entertainment business. His 1983 Thriller remains the most popular music video of all time, a 14-minute horror spoof that literally changed the business. Here's more on the man known as the King of Pop.
His timeless moves, addicting tunes, and yes, that voice. We will never forget the genius talent of the King of Pop.
Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine.
It's been 5 years since Michael Jackson tragically died from a heart attack. At just 9 years old, he captured our hearts singing with his brothers, the Jackson 5.
Oh, baby, give me one more chance.
And for 4 decades, we saw hit after hit, including Beat It, Smooth Criminal, and Billie Jean. Michael still holds the record for best-selling album of all time. And on his anniversary of his death, the icon is missed by millions of fans worldwide.
You know that I love you so much.
From grueling monsters to outer space routines, his visions were always out of the ordinary. But even though he's not with us, his music lives on. Yasmin Mahfouz, Ebru News.
We are now joined by Dr. Bart Rossi, Paul Oster, CEO of Better Qualified, and via Skype we have Zack Greenburg. He is the author of the Jay-Z biography Empire State of Mind and author of Michael Jackson. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, we want to talk about Michael Jackson's legacy because obviously there's a lot of folks that still absolutely adore him. He's sort of like an Elvis cult figure, if you will. But there's some folks that have some questions about him. Zack, we'll start off with you. What do you think Michael Jackson's legacy is 5 years later?
Well, I think he's going to go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, entertainers of all time. And to me, in writing my book, pretty much what I discovered was here's a guy who was not only the greatest musical entertainer of all time, but one of the top earners, 1.9 just for inflation over his career.
Well, Zack, we want to get back to you and certainly talk to you more about that. But Dee Dee, now this was a Hoosier, an original Hoosier.
Gary, Indiana. All right.
What are your thoughts? I mean, just trying to take the temperature of how everybody looks back, and we kind of grew up watching him.
Yeah, I just choose to really love him as an artist. I mean, I know the other stuff was bad, but I like to focus on the positive with Michael Jackson because he produced so many hits. He was so talented and incredible. And remember, as a kid, I mean, he wasn't able to have a childhood. His dad, worked the boys to death, and he was the little guy. A lot of pressure on him early on. So it's understandable why he had problems at the end, but I think he's great. I love his music. And
Paul, we want to certainly talk to you a little bit about dollars and what happened to him in terms of his poor investments, but just your thoughts personally.
I love him too. Watching the early years, I think, were his best years for sure. But he's the perfect example of it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you save. His expenses and extravagant lifestyle, it ultimately killed him. They put that tour together, the last tour, This Is It, to try and bring his estate to make it solvent because he was about to lose his prized possessions, and that's the copyrights of all other artists' music. That's really where his estate is worth so much money.
And he just also releasing the family's releasing also a new album as well. Dr. Bard, you see this. You have everything,
right.
And you wonder what happens to people. How do they go from being this like mega star to almost being ridiculed?
Well, first off, I think he will go down as brilliant, no question about that. And I agree with, it's unanimous. We all love him for that. But I think he grew up with a lot of personality problems. He was pushed by his family, and he never really understood happiness. He never understood how to be happy with what he's doing and what he's achieving. And it was almost like a push for him. He was brilliant at it, but I'm not sure he ever really accentuated how happy he was in actually doing what he was doing as a living.
He wasn't happy.
Well, I was just going to say, take a winning personality, a winning person, a winner, if you want to say that, usually can be happy wherever they are.
But happiness depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it. It's not a matter of just wealth or the money that we could talk about, or your possessions. It's about what you actually are doing and enjoying every moment. Just a quick analogy, I saw Jeter the other day make an incredible play in the field. The ball took a funny bounce and he grabbed it with his right hand and he threw the guy out. And afterwards they had the camera on him and he was laughing. And that's the kind of guy that really loves what he's doing. And that's the kind of guy who's a winner.
We want to check in with Zack also. You're listening to all of us talk about this. Do you think Michael Jackson was a happy man? Maybe not obviously when he died, but in the earlier years, do you think he was happy?
You know, I think he had moments of extreme happiness. You know, he's somebody who really relished the spotlight. He's gone on record saying he never felt as much at home as he did on. And you know, when
Well, we're going to get back to Zack in one moment.
That level of success did make him happy, but you know, you can't have that exact kind of feeling all through the career there, I think.
Well, Zack, since you did write the book, what were two things that might surprise us that you learned in your research?
Yeah, you know, I think that one thing that would really surprise people to hear is that Michael Jackson was actually a pretty savvy businessman on the one hand, and then on the other hand, toward the end of his life, became somebody who, you know, kind of got his spending out of control. But he was the one who wanted to buy that Beatles catalog. You know, he was the guy who wanted to have a shoe line and a clothing line and a record label, and he did all that 10 years before Jay-Z or Diddy or anybody like that. So I think I would say, you know, he was a better businessman than people realize, and he changed the way that fame was monetized. He allowed these kind of brand extensions to start happening that have become almost modern-day entertainers.
Well, we want to talk to you a little bit more about what your through your research, what you think happened to him. But in terms of all of a sudden you go from being a billionaire with all these fantastic investments, I mean, to go down to almost being bankrupt, Paul, is almost amazing. That takes a lot of work.
Well, he was his own, you know, biggest problem. Once, unfortunately, after his death, his estate now has amassed like $600 million over the past 5 years. So as a control freak himself and not letting other people manage his money, and I think I saw the title of the book, maybe Jackson Inc., entertainers that don't run their company like a company, and they control everything, and they make decisions about expenses, and they don't look at returns. You know, what's it going to cost me to buy Neverland? What's it going to cost $5 million a year in maintenance? What's it going to cost? He borrowed $380 million towards the end of his life to try and bring his estate, you know, back, and the interest on he couldn't pay the interest on the loan, so he didn't look at things from a financial standpoint.
And it's not just Michael Jackson. You know, we want to transition to a lot of, you know, Nicolas Cage got himself into trouble. I mean,
yeah, but I think a lot of it's when you have bad enablers, you have bad business guys. So many times you're skimming off the top and they're cheating them. They don't know, and they let everybody else run everything around them, their entourage. And they lose their money. It may have been a little different with him, but at the end, he let his enabler kill him. I mean, gave him too many drugs because he couldn't sleep at night and he couldn't wake him up again.
But I mean, let's just say, you know, you can't have the big palace and the big mansion and stuff like that. Well, you know, he probably could have sold everything and had a really nice 5-bedroom house or something, Dr. Bart. I mean, like, you know, I mean, why can't people, once you're on top, why can't they go to something a little bit more modest?
Well, like we say on this show all the time, you know, we all have different sides to our personality. And when it comes to Michael Jackson, he had many sides, and some of them were not good at all. Some of them were really quite bad, and yet he was brilliant as a performer. But as an individual, there were a lot of dark sides to him. And I think he had trouble really coping with all of those issues that he had internally. And it resulted in the financial mess that he created. And I do agree with Zack that he probably was brilliant in some respects financially, but on the other side, he was extravagant.
Don't you think in the beginning and at the end,
he was extravagant, though. I mean, beyond belief.
Beyond belief.
But it is interesting how he changed the business side of the entertainment industry. You know, you see kids like the Olsen twins, who are just these mega billionaires now, who have done such amazing things in terms of finances and their clothing line, and they really invested well. But not everybody. It's an interesting thing that you really do have to take a look at it, Paul, and really be a business person. person.
tens of millions of dollars on artwork and trinkets and this lavish lifestyle. That those are not investments.
His house was a circus. Neverland was literally a wonderland with rides and giraffes. And
$5 million a year just to maintain.
So trinkets are not a good investment.
no wonder monkeys and giraffes and carnival
You
rides.
appreciate the minute that you walk out of the store. So.
But the rights to the Beatles music, that's a good.
That was smart.
great.
That was good.
That's a musician, a visionary saying. And he did it long before that. He bought Great Balls of Fire, and he bought.
And he
Sly
married
and the
Elvis
Family
Presley's
Stone.
daughter. He was going that extra mile, trying to.
But money should be a stepping stone to happiness. It should be a way where you can express yourself, do a lot of good things. And I think with Michael, where he went with this was all of this extravagant stuff. And he didn't really know how to live a life.
And don't they say stuff weighs you down, Dr. Bart? I've always heard that, you should get rid of all your stuff and you'll feel a little bit lighter.
Well, most people will tell you when they get rid of their stuff, they don't miss it, and they even forget what they had. They're just happier doing what they're doing.
But there also seems to be when they start out and he's making all this money, and then it kind of goes down a little, and he spends more, and he can't afford that anymore. That's the problem. He cannot maintain that level.
Let's check in again with Zach. Zach, do we have you?
Yeah, I think that one of the things about Michael, look, he was an incredible ideas guy. Both when it came to music and to the business. Things like buying the Beatles catalog. What he needed all throughout his career was a bean counter, a concierge to execute those ideas. And throughout the 80s, he had people around him who he could trust. Later on in his career, got kind of out of control, evolving carousel of guys we could trust who were dipping their hand in the pot. And I think that really control, and that was kind of the main reason why the financial situation did.
Well, in terms of, thank you, Zach. In terms of entertainers today, is there anybody that really compares to Michael Jackson in terms of just the entertainer? And again, there's a lot of folks that don't like him because of some of the controversies. Anybody, Dee Dee?
Well, I hate to use Whitney Houston as an example because she died tragically as well, but they remind me of each other because they were so talented and so wonderful. And they both couldn't handle it at the end.
And yet she also had some financial problems as well.
They remind me of each other, and I think they're both the most talented right now. I'm sorry, Jay-Z can't compare to Michael Jackson, no way.
No. Anybody, Paul?
I can't come up with anybody that would compare to him on so many different levels.
Elvis back in the day,
yeah,
that
back
would be
in the day, right.
Yeah.
But
no comparison.
And Frank Sinatra in terms of then the next era before that. I thought if you went to every era, I don't know.
And just bringing up the Sinatra thing, if you look at Tony Bennett, for example, he's still performing in his 80s, and he loves what he's doing.
Oh, he's fantastic.
And so it's a different approach to life.
And I sat next to him in a restaurant and said, "Oh, my mom loves you," and he couldn't have been nicer. Actually talked to her on the phone, but that's another whole story. Zack Greenburg, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We're going to take a short break now. From Hollywood to the sports world we go. We're going to move into a new arena. Up next, why good athletes go bad.